Hello, my name is Linda Gorordo, and I am, like you, a homeschooling parent who had to figure out what I was going to do with my kids when we got to high school. This was a while back, as my kids are now two have graduated college, one is in college, but back when they were in third, fourth, fifth grade, I started having that, oh, what if they don't go to high school? Oh, how do we go to college if we don't go to high school? And I started looking into it, and I did that by what you're doing, workshops, uh, books, mostly talking to people, other people who were on the path ahead of me. So today we're going to go through the basics of the law in Washington, what it means to homeschool high school, and hopefully offer you some confidence and some choices to know that you can do this going forward. Okay, why is that not working? So before we can really talk about homeschooling high school in Washington, we need to talk about what does it mean to graduate high school and what does a diploma look like when you homeschool high school. So in the state of Washington, we have several different ways to earn a diploma. One is through a traditional public school path, whether that is a traditional high school or an ALE, an alternative learning experience that is available to many homeschoolers in their districts. Those are loosely referred to as homeschooling support programs, but they are public schools. And to earn a diploma from one of those, you have to meet their requirements. And there is a standard set of requirements, 24 credits. It's outlined what that has to be, including things like Washington State history and PE and how many years of English and how many years of math and all of those sorts of things. So that's a pretty traditional path that most people are familiar with. If you choose to go to a private school, whether that's brick and mortar or online, they have similar requirements. They're not identical to the public school requirements, but they have similar requirements, a set of standards that you have to meet in order to graduate. What's interesting and what surprises a lot of people about homeschooling is that there is no list of requirements to graduate high school as a homeschooler. That discretion is left to the parent, and the parent can decide once a student is 16 when they have met their requirements to graduate high school. And that gives parents a lot of freedom in choosing curriculum or not, in choosing activities, in all the various things that parents can define as a part of the learning while students are in high school. So parents, when they feel their student has completed their requirements, can issue a homeschool diploma that is completely valid, and your student can always check the box, yes, I graduated high school, and the name of your homeschool. One thing I will say is, in order to enter college, there is a set of college entrance standards that most colleges have. So while there are no requirements to graduate high school in Washington, if your student is on a path to going towards college, then in planning high school, you should be using a college entrance requirement formula in order to determine what classes and credits they should be earning while they're in high school. Additionally, a diploma can be earned through community college. So anyone, regardless of their age in Washington, if they earn an associate degree, can request a high school diploma from the community college. So Running Start is and we'll talk a little further about Running Start later in the presentation, but Running Start is a program that allows high school juniors and seniors to attend community college. If they earn an associate degree during that time, they may also ask for a high school diploma, and that is issued by the community college that they attend. In addition, students can sit for the GED exam. That is not a high school diploma. It is considered equivalent of a high school diploma. Some people feel comfortable with it. There's not much real need to do it. In Washington, in some other states where the laws are different, more students will take the GED. But in Washington, it is legal and accepted for parents to issue a homeschool diploma. And so there's no need to take the additional step of taking the GED exam. Okay, moving on to, before we sort of figure out what your student's going to do in high school, One of the ways to do that is to try to look further ahead and say, what is their pathway going to be after high school? Remember, I said if they're going to go to college, then there's going to need to be a certain set of college entrance requirements met. These are some of the various pathways that students may take after they graduate high school. Many graduate high school and enter the working world. Many go in pursuit of a passion, such as art or music or dance or programming, without further education involved, or with delaying education to a later point in their lives. Many kids enter the military, trade or vocational schools, community college certificate programs. So in addition to offering associate's degrees and programs that would move students onto a four-year university, many community colleges offer 1- and 2-year certificate programs in things like nursing or web security or real estate, or there's a bunch of different things that if your student is interested in, they offer certificate programs. Many students do a 2+2 community college, then transferring to a 4-year university, and then the pathway of going directly from high school into a 4-year university. All of these pathways recognize our homeschool diploma in Washington, but those paths are going to look different for what is necessary beyond. So if your students are going in pursuit of a passion, then obviously during high school, they're going to be pursuing that passion and preparing for that. If they're going into a trade or vocational school, hopefully while they're in high school, they're able to take some preliminary classes or some preliminary study on those areas that are interesting to them. And again, if they're pursuing a 4-year college degree, they would follow a traditional college entrance path. One of the things to think about during this time is that in setting these goals, students and parents are at very different places developmentally. And a 15-year-old is very different from an 18-year-old. I sometimes like to say that the difference between 15 and 18 is similar to the difference between 2 and 6. The only difference is they're big, so you don't see it physically, but there's so much brain growth and development going on in those teen years. It's easy to look at them as little adults, but they are not. They are developing these skills. So as you are looking ahead and saying, well, by the time they're 18, they need to have completed these particular college requirements, they're not always able to look at that picture ahead. And it's something that parents can pay attention to and making the plans and setting the goals as the students come along and recognize what those goals are. And my favorite story about this is my oldest son, who took a trip with my husband. He was, from an early age, 12 or 13 years old, my son had a passion for wanting to attend a specific college on the East Coast. And my husband took him to visit a handful of colleges on the East Coast when he was a junior in high school. And he started calling me and saying, Mom, did you know if I want to apply here, I have to have all 3 lab sciences? I have to have biology and chemistry and physics? And I said, yes. And that's why we did biology in a co-op. And that's why you're going to take chemistry and physics at Running Start next year. Oh, okay. And then a few days later, Mom, did you know I have to do community service for some of these schools? Well, yeah, that's why we've been going to the food bank for the last couple of years and helping pack the boxes. And it was that he was awakening to where he needed to be as an 11th grader, but I had already looked ahead from when he was an 8th or 9th grader and set the path so that when he got there, those things were still achievable and the doors were still open for him to be able to follow that path he wanted to. That's not always a perfect match. Sometimes we think they're going in one direction and they go another. But the main point I want to make is just to understand that your student's ability to see the big picture and to see ahead and to work towards a goal is developing during this time. It's not something that you necessarily should expect them to be able to do. And the better that you understand that, the easier you can make this path on your family. Most of these pathways that we're discussing do require some form of information on what high schooling looked like. Yes, they can check the box, I have a high school diploma, but keeping a transcript, keeping some form of records of what they have done in high school can save you trouble later. For example, if a student decides to go back to school after a gap, you wouldn't need needing to go back and recreate what happened years later. So even if they're not going to college, putting together some records that would go with their diploma would be helpful. And if they are going on to college, then there's a whole package of documents that the parent would be expected to complete as acting as their high school counselor. We talk about high school credits, and it's kind of important to understand what is a high school credit. So when a student is in a high school, they take a class and they sit in that classroom for 180 days for 50 minutes a day. That's considered an hour, so it's considered 180 hours. We all know that that's not 180 hours of learning. So there's some discrepancy between the public schools equate learning with time. Homeschoolers don't really equate learning with time, but in our record keeping, we have to be conscious of that. So 120 to 180 hours of study in a subject can be considered 1 credit. If you do less than that, it might be a half a credit. If you do more than that, obviously you can award additional credits. In addition, you can award credits based on mastery of material that would be covered in a traditional school year. So if your student, for example, were really, really interested in algebra at a given time, and you completed an algebra text that would be done in a school over a year, and you completed that in 6 weeks, that is still an algebra credit. It's not less so because it took you less time to do it, provided you cover the traditional scope and sequence of what is covered in a school type situation. And again, this is for accounting for colleges so that they can compare students. Likewise, if it takes you longer to do what would be done in a traditional school year, like my daughter, who we took 2 years to complete algebra, is still just 1 algebra credit, because if she had been in school, it would have been a whole year to earn that credit. Additionally, 1/4 of community college counts as a complete credit of high school. This is where Running Start and other programs can earn credits quickly. Dual enrollment is attending community college while they're in high school. They get both high school credits and college credits on an equivalency of 5 college credits to 1 high school credit. So a 10-week community college quarter class is equivalent to a whole year of high school. One other thing to note there is that high school credits may be earned before high school. So if you have a 7th or 8th grader who's working ahead doing high school work in those earlier years, as long as they are doing work at the high school level, those credits can be awarded. Additionally, this happens in traditional schools as well, when students take foreign language or algebra or early sciences that the school districts recognize are high school level. And many homeschoolers do take advantage of this. If you're in a co-op where your student is taking classes, even if they're an 8th grader and they're taking classes that are designed for 9th to 12th graders, that would be a situation where they would have a high school credit for that class. In the state of Washington, it takes 24 credits, and as I said before, they're prescribed for a student to graduate from public high school. But because of all the options that homeschoolers have and all the various ways that we learn, many times homeschoolers have many more credits than that. And that's fine. There's no limit to what your student can learn and no limit to what you can accomplish. So now you know what a credit is and you know how you use a credit, but how do you earn a credit? What are the ways that credits are available? And again, this is a parent awarding the credits by keeping records of what a student has done and deciding what qualifies as equivalent to those hours mastery that defines what a student has done. So things that you do at home, home studying, homeschooling, unschooling, those are all the same and yet different in different ways. That students sometimes study on their own, sometimes parents are teaching in the home, Sometimes they're learning by other activities that they're doing at home. So any of those are valid ways of earning credits. Outside activities, and this is somewhere that homeschoolers can really benefit from. Outside activities like robotics or dance or wilderness programs or theater. Well, there's just an unlimited number of outside activities that our homeschoolers can be involved in, and those activities can be considered curricular. In addition, there's other things like 4-H and scouting that offer a wide variety of activities that, depending on whether it's the overarching activity or something specific they get involved in because of that, there is curricular value because they're learning as they're doing that activity. Alternative learning experiences are public schools that support alternative learning. You can access those part-time as a homeschooler, so you can use them to just take 1 or 2 or 3 classes. If you find that there's something that you can't offer through a co-op or offer through home, you need support for lab science, or you want some support for teaching your student astronomy, ALEs are a place where you can enroll as a full-time student, but the little secret that's not told a lot of times is that you can use ALEs for part-time. My kids did a little bit of that. We happen to live near Sky Valley, and my kids took some foreign language. My daughter took a cooking class, just supplemented some of our homeschooling activities, and met some other kids in the same time, and that has worked out really well for my students. In fact, my daughter, who's 22, is about to rent an apartment with a girl that she met back in high school when they were both part of an ALE, taking a cooking class together. Co-ops. So there's lots of different ways to do co-ops. There's all around Washington, there are large co-ops that are organized with large groups of families, where some families teach, other families pay to be taught. Sometimes there's outside teachers. A lot of times parents are involved in the running of it. It's a co-op. You have a job to be a part of it, usually to help out. But co-ops offer lots of opportunities for various types of classes. Those credits get awarded by the parent, not by the co-op teacher, because the co-op is not a school or a sanctioned credit offering body, but parents can use those credits as homeschool credits on their transcripts. Community college, I've already mentioned Running Start as a program that pays for juniors and seniors to attend community college. That pays the tuition, and then parents have to pay the books, fees, and transportation. In addition to Running Start, there are several other programs that allow high school students to attend community college. Early entry programs where they might be advanced and be entering community college earlier than their junior year. CEO or open doors type programs, which are technically high school completion programs, but they offer opportunities for homeschoolers. They have slightly different funding and slightly different requirements than Running Start does. And for some students, those are a better fit than Running Start. It's really a matter of doing your homework and figuring out which program might be best for your student. As homeschoolers, we have access part-time to the public schools. My kids did this as well. We seem to have done lots of things. My kids, my younger 2 students did some part-time public school. My daughter, who's very musical and now has a music education degree, really wanted the opportunity to sing in a choir, and she went and enrolled at the local high school and took choir and Spanish for starting in her 10th grade year. And she made a lot of great friends and had a lot of great opportunities for singing through being a part of a large choir. She had been taking voice lessons privately, but that didn't meet her desire to be part of a larger singing group. So that was one way that we used part-time public school to fill a need that we weren't able to fill within the homeschooling community. In addition to the public schools, there are a host of public school technical programs. such as Wanak, which is in King County, Snow Isle, which is in Snohomish and Island counties, Lake Washington Tech, which is a technical college in Kirkland. There's other technical colleges around the state. Many of them have high school programs. Some of them also have community college programs, but many of them have specific high school programs that are more vocational in nature. And as homeschoolers, we have access to those programs. So students who are interested in culinary arts, interested in graphic design, welding, machining, auto repair, there's lots of different things that can, and some other higher tech options, programming, that may be available through some of those organizations. And because they are part of the public school system, those are free to homeschoolers and accessible. One of the things to talk a little bit about is course creation, or what I call translation, and that is choosing the pathway for your student and then figuring out how to define that in your documentation, as opposed to trying to choose what's going to look like how you want it to look for a school or a program that your student might be going into. And my example on this is when my oldest son was in, I don't know, probably 9th or 10th grade, he participated in a debate program. And in that debate program, they wrote constantly arguments and presentations, and they did research papers, and much in what it was English, but it was in the format of being part of a debate team. And at the same time, he had a group of friends that were reading classical literature together. And it was a group of moms who bribed a group of high school boys to read classical literature, that if they would read a book once a month and get together and talk about the book, then they could also have pizza and time to play games together, which they enjoyed playing board games. Those two things are completely unrelated to each other, but on my son's transcript, it says he had literature and composition that year. So that's how you can take things that our kids are doing that don't look like a traditional class, so to speak, and define it into something, translate it into something that looks more traditional, so that when a college counselor or someone is looking at that transcript, they actually understand what our student did. He did those things, he just didn't do them defined in such a way as the schools would define them. I hope that makes sense. Moving on. One of the things that people talk a lot about is how to earn college credits in high school, and I've mentioned Running Start and CEO, some of those programs. The question that comes up is why? Why would you want your student to earn college credits in high school? And there's who is going to do a bigger presentation on this that will be available on their website. But for right now, I will run through this quickly just so you have some idea of what's available. The main reasons for earning college credits in high school: financial. If you have college credits in high school, there are fewer credits that you will pay for later when they go on to another four-year university. So college credits in high school are transferable most of the time in most universities. There are questions to be answered about that, but in most cases, the credits are completely transferable. So that means you're paying for less credits later. It can also make your student more competitive. One of the things, if they're looking at entering a competitive program or an elite school, one of the things those schools do is ask themselves, how did the student challenge themselves? Well, going to college while in high school is one way of showing that a student challenged themselves. Another opportunity there is for higher level learning. In most high schools, a student can take Calculus 1, but if they go to the community college and they start in their junior year, they can take Calculus 1, 2, 3, and 4. So they have the opportunity and differential equations and other higher level math. And I'm using math as an example, but it allows them higher level learning if that's what they're seeking while they're in high school. And that higher level learning can be an advantage to them when they're applying to more competitive colleges, should that be their path. Graduation rates and priority registration. So in particular for public universities, graduation rates have come down to where students are unable many times to graduate in 4 years because classes are impacted. What having college credits in high school can help you in that way is the more credits you have, the higher up on the registration priority list you are. So you can have the opportunity to register early, possibly get your classes in a better sequence and graduate earlier rather than having graduation delayed because you couldn't register into the sequence of classes that you needed. It doesn't always work, but it is one of the things to consider when earning college credits in high school. That's the why. Now the how is running start dual enrollment, which I've already spoken about, AP testing. So AP advanced placement is testing offered by the College Board that awards a score on a test that then some colleges will accept as college credit. CLEP testing is testing that is testing a student's knowledge in a subject, and some colleges will accept that as college credit. And college in the high school are classes taught in the high school, but you can earn college credit for them. It's like dual enrollment, but instead of being on the community college campus, it's on the high school campus. My younger son did this when he took chemistry at the local high school. They offered it as college in the high school. So he was able to take what was a traditional chemistry class at the high school and earn college credit for it. So that's another way to do that. Through all of this, you need to be documenting and validating what you're doing. And there's multiple ways to do that. So transcript is the main record keeping device that you have as a homeschooling parent. The transcript is a snapshot of all high school academics. So all the classes they took, the grades they earned, the credits they earned for those classes. The homeschool transcript incorporates any outside classes. So if they took a class at a high school or took a class through a community college, took an online course that had certification, then all of those grades come onto the homeschool transcript so that it is a single snapshot of what the student did academically in high school. So grades and credits from outside sources are included there. Those help to validate the other homeschool grades. So having a mix of things from inside and outside is one of the things that colleges look for to say, has someone other than the parent seen the quality of this student's education? Test scores, annual assessment. So during high school, you still have the Washington requirement for annual assessment, but your ACT, SAT, college entrance tests, and the tests that do placement for Running Start can count as your annual assessment. A side note here, due to COVID-19, there's going to be many changes in testing. SAT and ACTs, most universities are going test optional, at least for the classes of 2021 and 2022. There's a lot to be determined in the middle of all of this, exactly what's going to happen with testing. But I will say that those test scores do help validate for homeschoolers the grades that we're giving them as homeschoolers. Another thing for you to be thinking about creating is course descriptions, and that helps to know what was the setting, the materials, and a description of the scope and sequence of the class. So when a student takes a class in a traditional high school and they say, I had biology, the college looking at that transcript understands what biology in high school looks like, what the scope and sequence, and what material is generally covered. As homeschoolers, we may not cover exactly that same material, we may not cover it in the same order, or we may focus on a given area. Like if your student had a particular interest in invertebrates, you might have done only invertebrate biology, or you might have done marine biology. And so you would not do what you wanted to do. You would define in your course description what your biology class looked like. So that's how course descriptions help colleges to understand what your student learned and how they prepared for college. All through this, students have the opportunity for extracurriculars. I get asked all the time by students, what should I do in high school? Should I join clubs? Should I get a job? What should I do? And my answer is always do what you're interested in, follow your passion, do what you love, rather than trying to check the box of what you think someone expects you to do, because passion shows, and be prepared to tell that story. So instead of trying to fit into their box, create your own box and then tell them how wonderful your box was. Look for leadership opportunities within and in whatever you do. This can be as easy as if you're in a club, taking an officer sort of position, can be creating new activities, creating new organizations with friends and other homeschoolers. It can be if they're involved in 4-H or robotics or any of those sorts of things, it can be taking a leadership role. Many introverted kids feel as if a leadership role is not something that they're comfortable with. And in that case, I encourage them to think about teaching whatever they're passionate about to younger students, because that can be considered leadership, teaching to younger students. A quick note here about double dipping. Homeschoolers have the opportunity to use extracurricular activities as both curricular and extracurricular. And the thinking there is I'll use robotics as an example. When they're on a robotics team, they're learning all sorts of things about physics and mechanics and programming and sometimes machining and design, and all of that is curricular. Then they're a part of a club, and that is electing officers and raising money and figuring out how they're going to get everybody lunch at the next competition and all those things that are part of being a club. We as homeschoolers can take the curricular piece and award credit for it, and then the extracurricular piece can still be listed on a college application or other application as an extracurricular activity. Work experience is great, especially in the field of interest. And depending upon what they do, work can be awarded curricular credit. It's, I think, important to balance the hours of learning and hours of interest. But if they're able to work in a field that really they're passionate about, then that's wonderful, and sort of combining experience with education. And again, if they are going forward to college, that's something that looks good on an application. In summary, flexibility is the key. You're gonna follow your students' passion, figure out what you as a family have value in education, choose those requirements for yourself, because we don't have requirements to be met in Washington. You're gonna recognize that teen growth and development is happening during this time. Expecting them to understand all of this from the big picture is probably unrealistic, and recognizing that your 14-year-old and your 18-year-old are very, very different in terms of their maturity and their growth and their understanding of their choices going forward. Keep doors open as much as possible. Kids change their minds. They want to explore different things. My daughter was sure she was going to Broadway, musical theater. That was it. There was nothing else to be discussed, all the way up until fall of her senior year, when she was doing college applications, when she decided, oh, that's really unrealistic. I want to teach music. And she went on to pursue a music education teaching degree, which is fabulous. But had we not left some doors open, she might not have been able to go in that direction. Find support as you go through this. You don't have to do it alone. There are lots of other people who've homeschooled high school. There's books, there's workshops, there's consultants such as myself. And the main thing I want to say is you've got this. You can do it. You're not going to screw it up. You're not going to make it so that they can't move forward and have the choices that you want them to have and that they want to have for themselves. Should you have any questions, you can email me or call me. My contact information is listed here on this last slide. And I appreciate you sitting in and listening to the webinar about homeschooling high school in Washington. Thank you.